Now we're up to D12. D12 is a modified block. So we're going to go to the booklet in the kit. And the modification basically takes this arrow piece and divides it in two. Now there's some conversation about whether or not this is beneficial because this gets really tiny. And when I made one before, it wasn't fun, but it was possible. So we're going to explore this, but I have not tried to take this piece and use this as EPP because this arrow gets appliqued onto this square here. And I also have not tried to then take these pieces and EPP them as is, like the triangle, the square, and the arrow. I have not tried that, and I'm not sure if others have, but that is a possibility if you want to try it. But in order to reduce the amount of seams, I think that having the square with applique on top makes sense for English paper piecing. So this is what we're going to work from the kit, and we're going to see how this goes. I have my pieces here. So here's the squares, and we're going to base these opposite sides and opposite sides. The rectangles, I do the small sides first, then the long sides. Now, these are the arrow pieces, and of course there's a left hand and a right hand, so that's why I wrote on them, so make sure I had the right number of each side. And I did experiment with basting before I started here. So what I did on this one is I basted the long side first, and then the short side, and then this side. So that's how I got this. And then I did the same thing on this one. So the first thing you're going to do with these is you're going to put them together. You're going to stitch them together with a seam. So once these are stitched, you have this tag and this tag that you have to tuck under this whole tip. So that seemed a bit cumbersome. So then I tried to baste this way, which was doing the short side, then this side, then the long side. So then the tag opposite, and it was opposite of this. I would not do them both that way because then these tags would clash. However, once I put these together, a lot of that fabric is underneath it, that tip already, and already lined up with this other tag. So I'm going to say that this is the way to baste them. One going one way, one going the other, because this is going to allow for a lot easier way of tucking the tag. And I'm going to go over a technique that will tuck the tag before you applique it, so that way you can have a little bit more control when you do applique it. So we're going to go over that once we get there. So the first thing I'm going to do is baste the squares, and then I'm going to fix the basting on this one, and then I'm going to baste these in pairs, one direction, one the other. So that means on one of them I do this first, and on the other one I do this last. That's how you classify that. And that's really, it doesn't matter whether this is first or second. It matters whether this is first or last. That's where the tag comes in. So let me baste all these. I'm going to put these aside for now because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot easier to applique these onto the square before we assemble everything. So that's the plan. But once we do assemble, you're going to put this in a row, and then connect it with this, and that's what's going to make the block. But first we have to prep these squares with the arrow pieces. So let me get some basting done. So I've got all these sewn together after I basted them so that the tags are going, this is kind of open, but the tags are going the same direction. So then from the outside of this point is just the one side to tuck under. I've also basted all of these other pieces. So the next thing to do is to take these squares, and I'm going to mark one of the diagonals so that I have a line to baste these two. So, and the other thing I'm going to do is try to tuck these tags in before I put them on here. But let me get these marked, and then we can go over how to do the tags. Okay, so I've marked the diagonal on each of these squares. I've set the bars aside for now since they're for later. And I've actually attached one of these. Now you want to look at this, and you want to line up this point here with the absolute edge with this line coming right to the point here. And then this point should, in theory, come to the corner of that square. And so you can kind of see, and I can feather this in when I applique it on. I have another technique that I've learned that I don't recommend for this unless you can do it better than me, which is very possible, because it ends up making these a little longer, and you can see the results of that. I did a second one and it was so bad I ripped it apart and had to make the fabric again because I destroyed it so bad. So anyway, I can push this in so that it'll be right at the corner, and I think I can do that with these. But technically what I do is I take this, and I'm going to do it on this side even though it's not, you do this from the back, okay? But the idea is that you fold this under so that the fold is just under this edge, and then you glue that down, and so then the tag's over here, and you zigzag it back and forth until the tag goes away. So this is the kind of thing that you get, so that it's real thick. The thickness does not matter, because once you take the paper out and quilt it, it'll just kind of nest right into the fabric. But it matters if it's longer. So because of that technique and the way it's done, I obviously don't know how to master that, and so I made it longer. But like I said, I think this one can be fixed. The other one was like out to here. It was ridiculous. So what I'm going to do is, I've done this once before and I wasn't terribly thrilled with the results, but I got better results than I thought because I went back and looked at the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and I obviously stapled this down here, and I thought, oh no, this is the other one I stapled too. And so I'm gonna applique this in a what I call traditional. And when I get down to this point, I will applique this whole one side here, and then start cramming this under. So I'll fold this up here, and then I literally just cram it underneath all of this fabric, under this point, until you can't see it anymore. And yes, it is thick. It does get quite thick, but that, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter. You can see the thickness on this is quite a lot, but you just make sure that you are stitching straight and only attaching the edge of the top portion up here where there's no white. The white is the dried glue. So you want to get right under that fold here when you applique it down, and not the tag, so then you can cram all that underneath. And you're going to have to make stitches that are really close together. Basically, you're making a fence. You're going to make a fence on one side and then push everything up to that. So yeah, it is a bit fidgety. This is a very difficult block. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to applique this down, attach these, and we're going to work on putting all of these on the squares. Okay, so I've got 2 of these done. They're not perfect. They don't have to be, but I know that some people are picky. Basically, the fact that this was a little longer, what I did is I bent it so that the bottom also grew, so that way I could then, around the curve, stretch it out so that it came to the point as best as I could, so that when I attach this square to the rest of the block and then take the paper out, it will look a lot better than it would have if I didn't bend it. So that's an option, and I did that on this side too a little bit, just to try to get it to as closest to the edge as possible. This one didn't quite come to the edge. I tried to stretch it, but when I was tucking under, it didn't quite come to the edge. Again, I'm not going to fix it because, you know, done is better than perfect. And this one is a little rounded, but again, I'm going to leave it because it's going to look fine in the final block. These two I have not yet finished. So I'll fold this in next to the fold and then I will tuck it from there. If I did it now, there's no stitching here, so it'll just come out the other side. But that's what the nice thing is about having the stitching. And then you just go under there. Now this one you can kind of see the side. I have pushed this under, and again, it will chill out once I get the papers out and the tension is released. But this is not a crisp situation. And like I said, once the papers are out and everything will chill out a little bit more. But I'm going to go ahead and finish these other two. And I would have, because I'm right-handed, I'll hold it this way and I'll stitch this way. And so the nice thing about this way is that I can get to the point easily and then come and tuck. The fact that this one's the other direction has created a little bit of an issue for me. And so I start usually here, and I can do that here, but when I come up this side, I end up going underneath and coming back over here because that's just easier for me. So that's the nice thing about English paper piecing, is because you can kind of move around as needed to make it as best as you can. So let me go ahead and finish these 2 points on the squares. So I've got all 4 of these appliqued and the staples are taken out. The next thing to do is to attach the rows together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I've connected each row, and then I connected the rows to the bar in the center. The one thing you want to pay attention to is making sure that you will line these across the bar. There's nothing to register a mark. So just make sure that these are lined up as long as the edges. And now my D12 block has been completed.